This is another tutorial in Photoshop assignment number 5, image retouching. This is about the clone stamp tool. So you've already done the spot healing brush, hopefully. In some cases that is not going to work for you, in a lot of cases. And you'll need a tool that is more user directed, one that will be one that you can control a little bit more than the spot healing brush, and that is the clone stamp tool. So over here you'll see a little brush that looks like, or it looks like a stamp, and it's a brush, but it's a very special kind of brush because it can take other parts of an image and use that to paint over the thing that you don't want. So for example, in this picture, which is called Glacier Clone Stamp, it's in that shared folder, you'll see that this is a nice picture of the Mendenhall Glacier sign in Alaska, but unfortunately there is a pole right in the middle of it. Now, the easiest solution would be to take a different picture altogether. You can save yourself a lot of trouble just by having a little bit of a plan before time, but in this case it was pretty much unavoidable. And so we can use the other parts of this image and use them to clone them over that pole. And it's going to be really easy here where the sky is, because the sky is a pretty consistent blue. It's a little bit darker at the top and a little bit lighter at the bottom. So this brush, we're going to get it to be about that big, and I want to make sure that the hardness of my brush is set all the way to 0, so it's got a real fuzzy edge. And when you just click with the clone stamp tool, it always pops something up. And I always have people who forget how to use the clone stamp during a test, and they see this pop up and they don't read it. This is telling you what to do, which is doing it in kind of a weird way. It says that you need to alt-click first to define a source point. So if we hold down the Alt key, you'll see that your mouse temporarily becomes a crosshair. This is where you're pulling from. So I can click up here where the sky's a little bit bluer, a little darker, and click. Just click once just to choose the area where it's coming from. Now when I move my mouse over, I've let go of the Alt key. Now you can see that it's showing me a little preview of what I'll be painting with. And when I hold down my mouse now and start painting, that little plus sign to the right of where I'm painting is where it's taking from. So it's taking from the plus sign and placing it where my brush is. The bigger the brush, the more of the area it's taking. Now once you've clicked once, no matter where you click again, it's always going to be that same distance from the original point. If you want to change that, you can always just hold down the Alt key somewhere else, click again and choose a new source point, and then start painting again. Now one thing you have to be careful of is until you let go of the mouse, that original pole was still there. So if I keep moving to the right here until my plus sign is where the pole was, I'm going to start repeating the pole. And so I have to be very careful. The way I avoid that usually is just by being far enough away from the thing that I want to remove so that that doesn't happen. Now that's difficult sometimes, and you'll have to pick a lot of different sources to remove it. Now this should be pretty straightforward when you're through the sky, because the sky is pretty basic. Now with the mountain we run into some more problems. One of those is that the sky, or the mountain, is, we don't know what's behind it. So we have to make up what was back there. And no one's really going to call us on it as long as we follow a couple of things. The first one is we don't want patterns. So you can see here that I've got this series of rocks. If I hold down Alt, click on those rocks, and use those exact same rocks to remove the pole there, we're going to run into a problem. And that is that our minds are very good at picking up patterns. We'll see them, even when they don't exist in some cases. But in this case, we can see, oh, well, those two rocks are exactly the same. And from far away, you should be able to tell, well, that's a little too similar. And so to avoid that, we're just going to introduce some randomness. So I can take some snow from somewhere else, or maybe a different rock, maybe this rock over here, and use that. You are in complete control of what was behind that pole in this case. And no one's going to, if you do it good enough, no one's going to question you on what you chose. It's going to look like it was just the original photo and that there was never a pole there. And so you can, and I'm just holding down Alt, choosing a new area constantly. That's what's going to give you the randomness that's going to make something look realistic. And I can take some snow here, maybe remove that. Take some of the snow from there. Maybe I'll put in a little rock from over here and put it in right there. But you can pick. And if you get too close to the pole and you start drawing the pole again, Control Z to undo, go back and hold down Alt and click a new point and make it go back even earlier. Now, as I get down here, I don't know what was back here either, but I can just make it up. When I get down into the greener mountain, that's a pretty consistent texture all the way around, so it's not even that big of a deal what I do anymore. So I'm just constantly holding down the Alt key. And I've got kind of a pattern here between these two states, so I'm going to hold down Alt. I'll hold Alt here and try to make it seem a little bit more random, even though I'm being very specific about what I'm pulling and what colors I'm taking. Yeah, those two rocks are way too similar, so maybe I can get some of the rock from over here and make that seem a little bit more random. And as I do that, I can back up. If you're careful, it shouldn't even look like that was there. So originally, the scene looked like that, and now that pole has gone completely. Now, if you'd like some additional practice, I always have people try to maybe remove this lady here from the scene. So we have this glacier that we could use, and hold down Alt and pick new places so you don't get a repeating texture ever. And just get some practice doing this. Now next class, you'll be using these skills next time we're in class, or if you feel confident about this, you could even start it right now. I'll show you what you'll be doing next. And you could use now remember, once again, holding down Alt chooses where you're getting the colors from, and then you just go over and click normally, and then it's pulling from the plus sign to wherever you're clicking. And it's just like a paintbrush at that point, except for what you're painting is colors from a different part of the image. This is if you cut a person out of a picture and it leaves a big hole, this is a way that you can fix that hole. This is probably the most useful tool other than the quick selection brush. This is probably the most useful tool in Photoshop. Those two together, you can do pretty much anything. Some of the other tools can make your life a little bit easier, but they're all just really replicating what you can do with these tools. So I'm going to stop there, but you can see that as I continue, I could easily remove pretty much anything I want out of a scene. And the more consistent a background is, the easier it is to remove it. But that is the process. Now, you don't have to turn that one in. What you will need to turn in, and this is one that we can work on next class, is this assignment called Clone Tool. Now this is a picture of a sunset, very pretty sunset, with a giant telephone pole right in the middle of it. The reason why there's two is because I want you to choose one. You can change the one on the right and leave the one on the left the same so you can see how much progress you've made. Now this one seems a lot more difficult because there's a lot of different colors, there's a lot of detail in that telephone pole that needs to be removed, but it's not that different from the clone stamp glacier. And the reason for that is because your colors are pretty consistently horizontal. So we've got this dark band of blue here. If I need to remove that, I can hold down the Alt key, choose that, let go of the Alt key, and now when I paint, if I just continue to pass that band of blue over, everything's pretty much horizontal. When it gets to the orange, and this lighter pinkish orange, we can use that same one all the way across. Now another difficult thing that you'll find, and this is just going to be practice, and I'll have you turn this in. This is what you'll get the points for, is just finishing this to the best of your ability. I want you to take this pole all the way down to the house and remove all of these other lines and just get some practice with it. I find this to be pretty zen, like I can kind of zone out and start working on this and then wake up like 20 minutes later and it's all done. But you may find that you like or not like to do this, and that's okay, just do it anyway. A trick with the poles or the lines, the power lines that I've learned, if I get a really small brush, just a little bit thicker than the line, I hold down the Alt key and I choose my source point is just directly above it, and then I can click and drag. That one might not be the best example. Let's go just to the right of it. And I should be able to get those poles. I'm just holding down the mouse now and dragging. And because horizontally the colors are pretty consistent, I can get rid of those lines all in one click, pretty much. And maybe on this one. And if I goof up, like I did there a couple of times, I can just quickly press Control Z, and that'll let me go back once. If I make more than one mistake, I can hold down Alt and press Control Alt Z, and that'll let me keep going back. Otherwise, Control Z will just undo and redo the last thing that you did. But I can just get right next to that pole and then just hold down my mouse and drag the line. And every once in a while I might need to reselect an area to work from. But those lines actually go a lot easier than you think they will, because the sunset's actually not as difficult as it seems. So that might be a little too far away. If you get your source, if you alt-click somewhere too far away, like say, oh, and don't forget this white in the middle is actually an image, so if you may accidentally select that. But if I'm holding down Alt and picking this lighter orange and working over here where the orange is darker, that's when it's an obvious edit. So you want to keep your source area as close to the place that you're replacing as possible. And I'm just holding down the Alt key, and every time I let go of the mouse, then I don't run the risk of redrawing the thing that I wanted to get rid of in the first place again. So every once in a while, just let go of the mouse, let it kind of reset, and start all over again. And if I need to get further away, I can just Alt-click again and remove that and keep going through it. So that's a little too much there. And I can make some corrections. A larger brush gives you less control, but you don't have to spend 8 hours doing something. That's always nice. I'd like you to spend 20 minutes or so on this. See how close you can get it if you would be able to fool somebody with it. And if you still need a little bit more practice with it, you're going to have opportunities. This is a big part of Photoshop. And you can see I'm making some pretty good progress here. Once you've gotten the telephone pole completely removed from the scene, go ahead and save that as class period, last name, first initial, space, sunset.jpg. Make sure you're saving them as a JPEG, and that's under File, Save As, and you make sure that the format is the JPEG, not JPEG 2000. I don't even know what that is, but a JPEG. Save it in your H drive as whatever class period this is, last name, first initial, sunset. Save that, and then drop a copy to me. And that is all you'll need to do for this part of the assignment.